And we're back on this Saturday morning. It is Sports Medicine Weekly, and net proceeds from our program, Sports Medicine Weekly, go to support orthopedic research at Rush through the liveactivenow.org fund. You can follow us on Twitter at SMW Home, and we also have a Facebook page as well. And our website is sportsmedicineweekly.com. Our producer, board operator, Eli Hershkovich, and our coordinating producer, Teresa Ann Seeger. I'm Steve Cashel with Dr. Charles Bush-Joseph, orthopedic surgeon from Midwest Orthopedics at Rush, subbing this week for Dr. Brian Cole, my usual co-host. Dr. Chuck, of course, is former head team physician with the Chicago White Sox, 14 years, still works for the White Sox, and also a team physician with the Chicago Bulls. So, Dr. Chuck, interesting, there's a great organization out there called NCSA. We want to talk about it in this segment. It's called Next College Student Athletes. Started right here in Chicago, kind of a clearinghouse for high school athletes hoping to attract scholarships.
You know, Steve, I think you and I, through all three of my kids were college athletes, and two of them were varsity. My middle son was a club athlete. But I have to tell you, this is a very scary thing for parents. You know, you think your son's a good athlete. They're showing that affinity, their willingness to work hard to try to get their game to the next level. And you ask your kids, you think you can want to do this in college? And when you get that answer, yes, most parents say, now what do I do? I'm sure you're there right now.
I've got 14 and 11 and the 14-year-old hockey and baseball player, and would love to play hockey in college. So,
well, you want to provide your child the best opportunities. And if they've got a skill or a sport that they love, you want to encourage it.
Absolutely. So let's bring on Debbie Garr. Debbie is joining us from Kansas, and this is a parent to talk about their experience working with NCSA. So I want to gather information from my own knowledge, but also for our listeners here on Sports Medicine Weekly. Debbie, thanks so much for joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So from what we understand, your daughter, Erin, is a volleyball player, has been with this NCSA, Next College Student Athlete, since January. And you guys are from Kansas, and Erin's in her fifth year of playing club volleyball. She's a right hitter and hopes to find a university where she can play volleyball competitively and also major in biomedical engineering. So she plays flute in the school band, and I know you've been working with Lana Simonik, it sounds like, in an NCSA volleyball recruiting coach. So what has your daughter's recruitment process been like?
Well, it's first of all, it's a little bit different than my son's. Just to back up a little bit, I have a freshman in college, and he did not want to play sports, so we went the merit-based route and a whole different way to go, as far as trying to get money. But with my daughter, she wants to play collegiate volleyball, and so I knew this was going to happen a whole lot sooner, and I knew that the process that we went through for the merit-based scholarships would be totally different. For one, merit-based scholarships are given in the senior year, March and April. And with athletic scholarships, this kind of thing really starts to happen sophomore year. I knew that the method I had used for my son was not going to work with my daughter. So I sort of, kind of had my ear out there, and I was kind of looking as to what, could I do to help her. And we attended a combine last December, January here in Kansas City, just really for the experience of my daughter going through that process. And while I was there waiting for her to finish, I was listening to a guy by the name of Paul Putnam talk about NCSA. And I really became pretty intrigued with it because I'm super organized myself. And here was this website that you could navigate the recruiting process. And so that's kind of how that got started. And ever since, since last January, we pretty much dove into the whole thing. And even though we're sophomores, we're really kind of early in the process of what we've been able to do to get started.
What are some of the initial thoughts you had? Was it, did you talk this over with your daughter and she expressed an interest, or what, obviously she was quite active and it sounds like you were in showcase type activities. Did you say to her, are you ready to do this on a college basis? What was the decision making?
Well, because I had been a high school coach my whole life and then stayed home and raised my kids, I kind of coached them through the youth sports, whatever they did. And so my daughter played. My goal was for them to not play club for as long as possible, just because I just think they specialize too early these days. But, so I was coaching her in soccer, volleyball, basketball, and softball. And just really, as they get a little bit older, middle school age, they start to tell you what they're interested in. It's not so much the parents taking them to all these things. The kid starts, hey, I don't want to do that. They start telling you. So the focus starts to narrow, especially as they start having to put more than one day a week into their practices. So basically she started to give up a sport, one by one. And you can tell that volleyball became her passion, and that was probably around, I'd say, age 12. And so, we were still playing softball. We hadn't given that up yet, but as a matter of fact, she's going to give it up this year. But it's kind of like you just have to kind of follow the lead of your kid and what their passion is. My interest was basketball. I played college basketball, but I didn't care what my kids did. They had to, you had to follow what they wanted to do. So you really just listen to your kid. And like you said earlier in the program, you wanted to help your kid any way you could. This is kind of like what you can do to help them get that scholarship.
Visiting with Debbie Garr here on Sports Medicine Weekly. She is the mother of an NCSA student athlete, Erin Garr, NCSA standing for Next College Student Athlete, a really neat establishment for athletes hoping to attract scholarships. And talking about your experience, Debbie, with working with NCSA, I'm Steve Cashel with Dr. Charles Bush Joseph at Sports Medicine Weekly on this Saturday morning. A couple more minutes here, but what would you tell families considering using NCSA?
Well, I do have other friends that are using it, and for anybody that's gone through the college process, there's something called the Common App that everybody has to fill out when they go to college, and it's kind of like everything's right there for you to navigate through that. If you use this, I've got friends that have signed up for it, but they don't get in there. They don't use it. They want their, kid to figure it out. And it's like, the kids need help figuring out what they want to do. And NCSA, through basically they give you everything you need to do. You just have to follow and do it. You just have to read. There's things they put on there to explain the recruitment process. They're there for whatever you need. You can read it. You can talk to coaches. I mean, it's just what I would advise parents to do is to, it's a simple website. Simply dive into it, learn about it, and help your kid figure it out because, you can't really expect them to do that on their own. They need a little bit of help getting started.
Does the service provide you, can you download video images of your child and their performance or statistics? What's the actual, how do you attract or how do you provide data to attract coaches or universities to your child? What is the mechanics of the system?
Well, this is a really great question. What they do is you put in all your data, all your statistics, how high your kid can jump, what positions they play, just all sorts of stuff like that. But what I think the biggest factor is that when you put your video in, they have coaches that evaluate you, and they assess you a percentage. And so what really happens is when I go in there and, if we did a search for Erin, we were looking for, very highly competitive academic schools that were competitive, you could see what schools and what schools across the United States matched up with those parameters. So every school would be a certain percent, maybe 93. You matched up, your match analysis was 93% with this school, 90, 91. That goes all the way down, to whatever. And so what really happens for the parent and the kid is that through what I would call an objective means, where you have, NCSA helping you evaluate where you are right now and what colleges would be appropriate to you in a percentage basis. So I think what happens for a lot of parents is they get I feel like I've got a pretty objective perspective on my kid's ability, but it really helps you narrow the focus and look at those schools that are going to fit your kid. And it keeps you from wasting your time looking at places you shouldn't be looking at.
Great stuff. We're out of time. Debbie, I really appreciate you joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly and telling the story. And good luck to all your kids. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
NCSAsports.org is their website. Interesting stuff. Dr. Chuck and I are going to continue with another segment after this, and this is going to be pretty interesting, we think. Fitness tips that are doing more harm than good. We'll dive into it with Matt Gauthier from Athletico. Stay with us at Sports Medicine Weekly, only on 670 The Score.